G'day Bomber fans, off-season Q&A time because I'm struggling for video ideas. And now before I get into it, I've answered every question while recording, but I will be leaving some out while editing just because there are so many to get through. So if yours isn't here, it's nothing to do with your question. I may have just given a bad answer and given it the cut, but I will go back to the post and answer your questions in the comments if it isn't in this video, but let's get into it. We have a question or comment from a recent video from Walter. They wanted a specific video on this, but I figured it would be better to do it here. Walt asks who I would have taken with each live pick in the draft instead of the players that Essendon took. I'm going to base this off how I was feeling at the time, the players that I was hoping we would take while Essendon were choosing. At 37, I was hoping for Angus Clark or Tom Gross. We did get Clark, but 2 picks later. At 39, we already had our key forward, Jerine, so I assumed it would be Angus Clark, to be honest. That's who I thought we were going to take because we needed that depth in defence, and we got that. I was also keen on Harry O'Farrell, who was taken 1 pick later by Carlton. At 61, I was actually eyeing off Archer Daywicks, to be honest, around this range, and Clancy Dennis. You guys would know I liked Clancy Dennis. Jackson Artemis, too, was another I liked, but we'd already got an Angus Clark, so I was less keen on him, more keen on Dennis and Daywicks. We got Unwin, and then at 70, it was again Dennis and Daywicks, but I did also see Zach Johnson on the board, and I wasn't unhappy with that selection. I think overall, you go in hoping you get certain players, and obviously I was really happy with Angus Clark and Zach Johnson too, and Daywicks in the rookie draft. Those 3 were players that at some stage I wanted us to pick, so that is good. I never really wanted us to pick Jerine or Unwin over other players, but I'm not unhappy we got them. Again, the club knows much better than me, and their strategy of filling needs would have been miles better than me just picking who I liked at the time. Another draft question, aside from Kako, which of the draftees do you see having the biggest impact next year? So I've talked to a few of you about this in the comments already, so one of you two might know my answer, but I want to say this out loud so everyone can get chatting about this, because I weirdly think that the later draftees we took are the more likely to get game time in 2024. I think Angus Clark is still quite skinny, but you know how hyped I am for him for the future. I think Jerine is in such a tough position to feature early. He's going to take time. I look at Zach Johnson, who's really well developed. He's very mature despite being younger. I look at Daywicks, who could easily play a role up forward if there are some injuries. To me, those are the 2 that I can see playing footy next year with Kako, even though one's picked 70 and one was a rookie pick. Even Reece Unwin, to be honest, I'm not overly hyped for him, but I can see him filling a role in the forward line if needed. So those late guys, Daywicks and Johnson, those 2 specifically are the ones that I can see playing footy next year. Philip asks, if Hawthorn can do it with a young squad, why can't we? I mean, for starters, they were knocked out in the semis. That's not doing it. That's not endgame. I honestly don't care about winning a final. I'd much rather it take us 5 years to win a grand final without winning any in between than for us to go out and lose in a semi next year like Hawthorn. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with Hawthorn, I'm just putting it into perspective. I do think, though, that this list has capabilities of shocking a few and moving up the ladder. Same happened in 2021. We were being picked for bottom 4, and our youngsters came in and revived us a bit. We had a huge impact. And we've shown at our best with this list that we can be up near the top range of the 8, but I think it's all really about luck. To be a good team, you need a lot of luck. Hawthorn last year were great, don't get me wrong, I'm not taking anything away from them here by saying this. I loved what they did, they were a good team, but they also had a really easy draw. They played North twice, they played Richmond twice. To close out the year, they played those teams again. They had a good run of games, and they had one of the best injury lists in the competition. I think Carlton had a better team and better peak than Hawthorn, but ultimately just suffered too many injuries. And Hawthorn were beaten by Port Adelaide, who was smashed by Sydney. So really, I look at the teams like Sydney, Brisbane, Geelong. I think if you're not one of those top teams, you need some luck in the home and away season to, I guess, win a game in the final series. And for us, we need that because our depth is just so young and so poor. If we stay injury-free, if Reid and Ridley play out the year, if Wright finds confidence again, if Parrish is up and about, I think we make finals. But the issue is, I think we can clearly say that we are relying on things to go right for us to have a good season. And you can't say the same about teams like Brisbane and Geelong. Those teams, they fight through adversity. We really need no adversity for us to be a good side. So yeah, I think the main answer to the question is we can do it. We just need a lot of luck. We are not good enough yet at all to be doing it the hard way like teams like Brisbane, Sydney and Geelong. To go off that a little bit, Huey asks where we will finish on the ladder and why. I don't think we rise much, and if we do, it's going to be barely. I'm kind of thinking around that 14 to 9 range of the ladder. I don't think we're bad enough to be bottom 4. I don't think we're good enough or have the depth to make finals. I like our best 23, as I said. I think we have good players, but they don't get a lot of help when we suffer some injuries. So like I said before, if we get lucky and stay fit and our draw, I guess, favours us, there is no reason as to why we can't make the 8, but I think that's unlikely. So I'm going to say 12th or 11th, kind of in that mix for finals, but not really making a serious push like other clubs. Similar range to last year. We have a bunch of questions about breakout players and leading goal scorers and best players from each zone. So we're going to start by leading goal scorer. I mean, Langford's the shout for me. He's just consistent. He stays fit. He doesn't go crazy with massive bags, but usually gets 1 or 2 on the board each game. Zone by zone, if fit, Ridley and Merritt are the other 2 from defence and midfield. I think those 2 are our best 2 players, personally. I love what they provide. And breakout player, hopefully it's someone like Reed or Cox or Sartas. We need one of those top draftees to come good and get closer to their ceiling. But I think Nick Bryan is probably my shout, though. I think he plays most of the year, and he can really start to put pressure on Draper to improve as well. I think Bryan is set for a really good year, and just a long year. Hopefully he plays a lot more than he has, because he hasn't played much in the last few years. Based on preseason training, though, I would also be keeping an eye on Jai Menzie. He is, from all accounts, looking really good. I think we have all given up on him a tiny bit, but if he can get back to that goal a game, pressure forward, but improve on his work around the ground, that would be really good for the club. What is causing our post-buy fade-outs, and how do we fix it? I honestly don't even know. This time last year, I thought it was fitness, but then we went out and worked hard to become a fitter group, and the same thing happened again. I think really it's standards and leadership and mentality. I remember hearing Langford in an interview when asked about a potential fade out. His answer was super underwhelming. It was him pretty much saying, we'll see what happens. It seemed like we didn't know if we were going to be good enough or strong enough to last the season. I think it's all above the shoulders, really. But, I mean, a 3rd year in a row would just be a disaster. I'm confident that it doesn't happen again. 3rd time lucky, it would be a major focus post-buy as well. It would just have to be. And if it does happen again, fans will riot. 3 years in a row would cause chaos. I'm going to follow up with another one from Men Without Plans, because I've been wanting to talk about this a little bit. So do we have any promising father-son or academy players in future drafts? That's the main gist of the question. Next year, there isn't too much. We have a small forward in our academy who is fairly promising. Hussein El Achkar, I don't know how to pronounce it, sorry. He kicked 19 goals from 15 games for Calder Cannons. Really small forward, by the way, 171 centimetres, so he's one option, probably later in the draft, if anything. There are some other academy and father-son options who are linked to the club, but none really seem to be doing too much right now to warrant me talking about them. Still early days, obviously. But I will end by saying in 2 years, we will have access to Kobe Buick, who is flying in his junior footy. He's the son of Darren. He is only 15, I think, so don't go pinning the future on him, but that is an option in a couple years' time, and nothing Kako level anytime soon, though. Which free agents do you think we'll go for, and possible top 10 selections that we may already be interested in? Starting with the last one there, the draft. So Willem Duursma is obviously the big one, I reckon. He's hyped player. He's going to be talked about a lot. The brother of Xavier. Couple of key forward options. You've got Archie Ludwig and Cooper Duff Tyler. I'd keep an eye on big-bodied midfielder Riley Onley as well, just because we haven't had a big-bodied midfielder since Watson. The list management team would have done work on all these guys already, but we don't even know what picks we have just yet. We might only have the one by the end of the year if we are active in the trade period. Speaking of the trade period, or I guess a free agency period, there's one player that I want to mention. I'll put videos out about this, obviously, but for now, Luke Davies-Uniacke is the one that I'm really eyeing off. I think he'd be an incredible get for our midfield, so keep an eye on him. And finally, longer question, what does Brad Scott and the leadership team need to focus on during this preseason and throughout the 2025 season to ensure that we can make finals? Do we focus on draftees and give them game time, or do we stick with what we have and move around the current list a bit? That's the main gist of the question. I think it is important that teams are always playing their best players and not just catering to youth, but I also think it's important that we reward good form and swing the axe when required when someone's underperforming. Last year, I don't know how Archie Perkins kept his spot in the team for so long, and that isn't me hating on Perkins. I just think it took so long to swing the axe there. That cannot happen again next year. I think to build a strong winning culture, you make young guys earn a spot in the first team. You don't just play them because they're young. So that'll make them complacent if you do that. You make them earn their debut and earn every game they play, and then they understand to, I guess, play footy, you have to play well. And then you show them what the standards are by dropping them if they're not contributing to the team. No one player is bigger than the side, and every year the goal for every team should be as to win as many games as possible. Even for Richmond, they should be thinking the same thing. Yes, they're in a developmental period, but just giving debuts to every new player isn't going to teach them anything other than exposure. You need to actually earn your spot in the team, whether it's through training or through VFL performances, and then you go from there for the future. That's the way I see it, but I think we need to improve in that regard as well. Archie Roberts definitely deserved a spot much earlier. Perkins and Cox should have been dropped earlier. I think the main goal should be to win each week, to play the best team each week, and then do most of the development off the footy field. That is that though, Q&A done. I'll have my post-draft Best 23 video out sometime this week, and probably another training update or even a board update to come to, because there is a lot going on there. Hope you guys have voted in the election, by the way. And also, do your research. Don't just vote because you liked a candidate as a player or they're passionate, they're saying big words. There is so much more that goes into footy than just wanting change. But that is all for now. Cheers for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and as always, go Bombers.